Hi everyone. Welcome to Are We on the Same Page? I'm Dave Thomas Rocker. This group used to be called My Spiritual Journey, but I decided to change the name of the group just to make it a little more broad, a little general. Before it was just on spirituality. Now I'm gonna expand it to cover all areas of philosophy. So I thought the first video I make on this new channel, revised channel, is just going to be sort of general discussion of what is philosophy. So anyway, let's just get into that. So this was just a slide I found on the web. I guess there's different ways you can define philosophy, but basically philosophy is just it's kind of the study of knowledge. I mean, it's the study of kind of fundamental questions about life and everything. I mean, philosophy was very ancient knowledge. The ancient Greeks had philosophy. They were kind of the first ancient society that was considered to have really great philosophers. They had a lot of really great ones like Plato and Aristotle and Socrates and Archimedes and Euclid and all these guys. And I guess at that time, they didn't have what we would call modern science. So I guess their science was really philosophy. And pretty much everything that they studied, all the questions they were trying to answer about everything, I guess could be lumped into philosophy. So philosophy is very ancient. But we still have philosophy today. I mean, I think philosophy really is the questions, the deepest questions we have. And they're questions that we still don't really know how to answer. But there's some very important questions that we can ask that we don't have the answers for, at least not the complete answers. So, according to this slide, there's 7 branches of philosophy: metaphysics, axiology, logic, aesthetics, epistemology, ethics, and political philosophy. I'd never even heard of axiology before, actually. It turns out axiology is the study of nature. Um, I guess the Greeks called it natural philosophy. I guess you could call some of that science, like biology, maybe. But so what's a philosopher? A philosopher is an intellectual person who seeks wisdom or enlightenment. So they study about knowledge, truth, and nature, and the meaning of life. So, it kind of, I guess a good way to think of philosophy is like we seem to, we think we know a lot about the world. I mean, we learn a lot in school. We learn a lot from our parents and from society. But you might want to take a step back and ask yourself, well, how do we know all this stuff? And I think that's really what philosophy is. It's kind of just looking at the big picture and asking basic questions about it. And that's why I like it. And I think that's why most philosophers like it. And here's another slide on different branches of philosophy. I think they include 6 out of 7 from the previous slide. The one they don't include here is axiology, and they say a little bit what they're about. So ethics, what is a value? Ethics is really it's also called morality, kind of what good and evil. I mean, I'm going to go into these on my own, but let's just see what the basic questions are. These kind of give a definition of these things. Metaphysics, what is real? Well, I think of that as science. Science is supposed to be concerned with studying things, at least that we think are real. So science is about the real world, the material world. But then, you get the whole question of the, material and spiritual realms and all that, duality, Cartesian duality. Aesthetics, what is beauty? Aesthetics is really about art, different art forms. We consider art beautiful, and of course there's different kinds of beauty. Some art is pretty grotesque or foreboding, but we still consider it art. Epistemology, how do we know? Epistemology is kind of the basic area of philosophy, the philosophy of knowledge. How do we know what we know? That's a very deep question to ask. Logic, how do we reason? I think, I kind of think of logic as a sub branch of epistemology. And logic is also considered a branch of math. I mean, there's a whole mathematical theory behind logic. And, there have been a number of very famous logicians, starting with Aristotle. I mean, he was the one who came up with syllogisms. And then classical logic kind of started in the or at least it came to fruition in the 19th century with things like Boolean algebra. And logic is even the basis for how computers work. Computers use logic. Boolean algebra got applied to classical computers, and now we even have quantum computers. So it looks like we're starting a new form of logic now. And then finally, political philosophy. I think this is a really important one. How should people be governed? How should we organize our society? How should we have laws and justice and all that? I mean, that's a very important question that pertains to all of us and the kind of society we want to live in. But we still don't have all the answers to this. That's why there's a lot of different kinds of governments. And it's a very deep question. What's the best kind of government? What kind of government should we have? This is an area I'm really interested in, by the way. I have my own political views, and I'm sure a lot of you probably don't agree with all of mine, and that's fine. We can disagree, and hopefully we can come to some consensus at some point. I mean, that's kind of how science works. You see what works best and stick with it. Anyway, I came up with my own. I didn't even look at the last two slides. I came up with this on my own. And I guess I hit 5 out of 7 or 5 out of 6. The only one I didn't put on this is logic because I kind of consider that part of math. But I just came up with this on my own. So, I call this theology, which is really just I don't even know if that was on the list, but philosophy of religion. Maybe they didn't include that because a lot of people think of religion as separate from philosophy. I don't think it is. I mean, to me, religion is a type of philosophy or spirituality. I'm not religious. I'm not religious in the traditional sense, but I am very spiritual. So, some basic questions you might ask about religion or spirituality. Is there a supreme being? Is there a God? I guess if there's a single supreme being, we usually call him God. Throughout most of history, there have been polytheists too. Not every society in the world believes in just one God. Some believe in many gods. So, are there many? Is there one, or is there not? I mean, it's got to be one of those three options. If there are supreme beings, what powers do they have? And what demands do they have on man? I mean, I guess religion is considered a basis for ethics and morality. That's part of the reason we have it. That's a big reason we have it. And then that brings us to ethics. Political. I kind of think of ethics as political philosophy, also moral philosophy. I mean, a lot of these are kind of connected. Ethics is concerned with good and evil, what's right, what's wrong, what's good, what's evil. Why should we try to be good if there is such a thing as good? Why is it better to be good than evil? And I guess I put justice in here, which is really more kind of political philosophy. But if you want to make sure people are good, how do you make laws? How do you organize a government or society to make sure that people are being good and obeying the law? And what kind of limitations should it have? All that. I mean, a lot of these are started out as deep questions, but then they get put to practice in important ways, and we're all kind of they have consequences for all of society and all of us. So I think that's part of the reason you should care about all this stuff. How about knowledge, epistemology? How do we know what we know? That's kind of the whole idea of epistemology. And then, another question I've asked myself from time to time is that, is knowledge completely good? I mean, or are things we shouldn't know or shouldn't know yet? I think I've always had the point of view that knowledge was good, but maybe there are some things that we're better off not knowing, at least for the time being. There's a lot of harsh truths in the world, and I think it's hard enough for children to learn there's no Santa Claus. So, I mean, we have to be careful, I think, with the truth and with knowledge. And of course, we have to be careful with what we do with it. You know. But how about science? And I guess I included logic with this, logic and metaphysics. Um, Metaphysics, I'd say, is deeper than science. I mean, that comes the whole thing, what's real. And I think scientists always, it's kind of interesting. When you look at religion kind of presupposes there's a supreme being, that there's a spiritual realm. And I'd say science presupposes that there's a material. But there have been philosophers that have believed that there is no material world. Berkeley, Bishop George Berkeley was a prime example of that. He was, what do you call it, idealist. Not in the sense that he wanted he believed in a perfect world, more that he just thought the only things that existed were minds or spirits and their ideas. There was no material world. That was just an illusion. Of course, the opposite extreme is hardcore realism, where you think that everything in the world is made of matter. Everything can be explained at principle through science and logic. I used to think that myself until I was about 18 years old. Then I started thinking about spirituality, and then there's also duality or dualism. That's what Descartes was. He thought there was a spiritual realm and a material realm, and I think I'm pretty much a dualist, but I also think there's ways in which they interact, and they're not completely separate. Um, and yeah. So what else did I say about it here? Yeah. So can science and principle explain everything? I used to think so. I guess that's hardcore rationalism or hardcore materialism. But if, I'm not that way anymore, I don't think science can explain everything. As a matter of fact, I think quantum mechanics was the first scientific theory that kind of indicated the limits of what science can do. The uncertainty principle. There's even in principle, it's impossible to measure physical quantities to arbitrary precision. That we know. And even in math, that's true. Gödel's incompleteness theorem. There's limits to what we can know about math, even. Math's not absolute. So there are limitations. And then, scientific ethics. I mean, as a scientist, I think scientists have some very important responsibilities, particularly experimental scientists or applied scientists. You have to be careful that your scientific theories are being applied in the right ways, that they're helping society and not hurting it. You don't want to, you want to be callous about, building weapons or, unleashing, genetic mutations, whatever. You got to be careful about what you're doing. So, um, art, aesthetics. So what is art? How do we consider what do we consider beautiful and why? And what is a work of art? What isn't a work of art? And what types of art there are? Obviously, there's a lot of different kinds of art forms. There's visual arts, painting and sculpture and film, and then there's also auditory arts, music, and then there's poetry and prose, writing. These are all different kinds of art form, drama, theater. So that's all different areas of art. Um, so what is art and why do we care about it? Why is it important? And the last one I put down here is life. I think these are probably some of the deepest questions. What is life, or what is the meaning of life? I never quite understood the meaning of that question, by the way. First you have to ask yourself, what is life? What do we mean by life? I mean, do we mean biological life, like plant life and animal life? Or do we mean, can, computers, artificial intelligence, is that alive? How do we define when things are alive, first of all? And then once we do kind of think we know what life is or existence, then you can ask other questions about it, like why are we here? Why are we alive? And then what happens to us after we die? What is death? And is death the end? I don't think it is, but if it's not, what happens afterwards? Of course, that brings us back to a lot of religion and, religious philosophy. So, like I said, these different areas of philosophy, I think there's a lot of interconnections between them. But these are all very, very deep questions that I think we don't really have the answers, or at least the complete answers for most of these, and that's why it's interesting to discuss them. And, Anyway, that concludes my video for today on what is philosophy. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys next time.